welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I am entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey, who this isn't an apology. This is an explanation, right? We put something out there that happened, but not in the way we expected it to, right?
Kind of. Well, actually, as for those that have been listening, you guys have found out that I am a professional wrestling fan, so therefore I'm a WWE fan, and we were really excited about the Halloween Horror Nights and the possibilities that WWE could potentially partner up with, Comcast, Universal, NBC, so forth. And we theorized that, hey, City Walk would be a great place for a Hall of Fame. And as soon as we said that, it was maybe the next day. Did you see the big deal with ESPN Plus and the World Wrestling Entertainment?
Well, it's interesting you say that because, this news initially got overshadowed by the NFL aspect of it. But it's kind of classic Bob Iger. The way you grow the Disney company, at least under Bob Iger, is you buy things and, or you link interesting deals. So let's talk about this WWE deal with the ESPN arm of the Walt Disney Company.
Right. So now, I know this is Universal Podcast, but now that we're talking Disney, they inked a $1.625 billion deal for the streaming rights. So up at this point in time, WWE and what they would call their PLEs. Back in the day, they were called pay-per-views, but since you're not really paying per view anymore, they premium live events, and that is your things like WrestleMania and SummerSlam, and there's probably 14, 16 of them per year. And they were on Peacock, which was a huge benefit for Peacock subscribers, right? These used to be $50 a piece to buy. And then if you subscribe to Peacock, well, ESPN now has the exclusive rights for these premium live events starting in 2026. So that is a big deal. And for that, I'm not too familiar, and you could probably speak a little bit more on this. ESPN Plus is like an extension of a bundling deal, right? It's not necessarily Disney Plus and it's not Hulu, but they kind of have these things synced together.
They do. But you have to understand that ESPN, when Disney acquired ABC Cap Cities back in 1995, ESPN was the diamond in the rough. It was and you get that too. And it was only later that Disney learned that, oh my God, this is a cash machine. But it was only a cash machine back in the cable era. And now in our cord cutting space that we are in now, ESPN sort of had to reinvent itself to remain, as financially viable as it had previously been. So that's why they made this deal to bring, and again, remember, they make this deal at the same time they made the deal with the NFL, with the notion of, okay, here are two huge audiences that previously hadn't been under the ESPN umbrella, but now, if you want these, you got to come here.
And live sports and live entertainment is a huge factor right now for pretty much all television entities. This is one of the few things that advertisers know that people will tune in and watch. So it's a big deal. We'll see if it's worth every penny, but at the end of the day, they're definitely going to get new subscribers to try this product. As myself, who won't miss a WrestleMania, they're gonna get us for at least March or April, right? Okay. So, but that is interesting. And the thing I'm saying here is, we said I still believe, and this is my new. I'm gonna throw this out there. So if anybody's listening and they have ties, all right, we said City Walk would be a great place for a Hall of Fame. But I will tell you, Jim, in the 30 plus times I've been to Walt Disney World, I have never stepped foot into the wide world of sports. I have no idea what's back there, where anything is. So what could get people back there that maybe don't want to watch a volleyball game, baseball game, or have a tournament? I think a physical WWE Hall of Fame would be perfect in the wild world of sports. What do you say, Jim? Can we make this happen?
Well, the interesting thing is, they have talked about putting more things back there. For example, prior to Splitsville being added to Disney Springs on the west side. There was talk of building a multi-lane bowling space back there, with the notion that Disney could not only host tournaments, but they could broadcast them from there. So, I got to tell you that there used to be an ESPN grill back there.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot of things they tried. And Eric, I got to say, a WWE Hall of Fame that every so often somebody would show up and do a signing or a talk or that sort of thing. Yeah, that would, and it's a beautiful space. But one of these times we're going to have to go over there. You got to take a walk. I mean, it's beautifully done. It's just tragically underattended, like 90% of the year.
Right. Well, I know this is Universal, so that was enough of WWE and Disney talk on a Universal podcast for now. But I thought it was something worth noting, and I'm not really sure what other podcast platform you would talk about this. Maybe you guys will talk about it on the dish. Who knows? But either way, okay. I had to take my opportunity.
No. and like I said, you've said on previous shows, folks, we're going to talk up the Universal Wrestling connection on a future installment of the Epic Universal podcast. I just have to do a ridiculous amount of research. I mean, this is a complete inversion of Eric and my normal roles. I have to be the one to know which question to ask him to get the really good story. So let me do some more work there, and we'll get that going maybe this fall.
That sounds good.
But anyway, lots of news this week. But before we get to the news, we of course have to mention our sponsor, and that is UnlockedMagic.com. And if you're planning a trip to Universal Orlando or Walt Disney World, check out Unlocked Magic. They offer real discounts, up to 12% off of theme park tickets. And with the holiday season just around the corner, Unlocked Magic is offering discounts on Mickey's Not So Scary, Very Merry, and Jollywood Nights, which Mr. Testa, my co-host over at Disney, tells me never happened. So you got to take advantage of this, folks. Unlock Magic is the best option for the biggest savings. So visit unlockmagic.com and save today. So, all right. I think we mentioned we are recording this week's show on August 13th. It'll post on the 15th. And so what? We are milliseconds away from this year's Halloween Horror Night starting?
Yeah. We're actually milliseconds away from Vegas Horror Unleashed, which we'll talk about next week.
Okay.
I don't have any. There were a couple, I think some point of view handhelds out there, but we're going to get a lot more information come next week. So come back. We'll talk all about it.
Okay.
At that point in time, I'll watch all my favorite vloggers share it. And I did see one report that it was like the most scared I've ever been in my life. And I'm like, is that, I don't know if that's a great Google review, but I guess that's what they're going for, right?
There I go. Yes, I filled my souvenir adult diaper. So now, Speaking of things that are on the west side of the country, we have some news about what's going on at the Universal Studios Hollywood version of Halloween Horror Nights. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of scare zones announced. So bear with me here. We have, I think 4 of them were announced this week, which was interesting and fun all in its own right. So the Carnival of Carnage scare zone, that is a twisted sideshow where murderous clowns with a Z make you scream and part of the act there. So that is, Jim, were you familiar with Jack the Clown in 2007? It sounds like that must have been a big one.
We have to talk to Mr. Aiello again, because I want to say that, what's a polite way of saying this? Mr. Aiello was a friend of Jack.
Oh, okay.
When this character was initially, debuting in the park. So, he would have some interesting stories about Jack the Clown. And honestly, Jack the Clown was one, every time I've encountered him in the Universal parks, he is their character. They invented him. he is the most terrifying thing in clown shoes. I'm just gonna say, all right, just he can stay over there with his squeaky nose.
Right.
Okay.
Well, don't get too comfortable. There will be more clowns later. But first, we're going to go to the murder of crows with a Z.
Okay.
So this must be a theme that we're spelling things with a Z. It feels like I'm back in the 2000s, early 2000s. But,
okay.
So this is this one was debuted last year, but it's essentially a scare zone where you get inside a giant crow's nest.
Oh.
So,
okay.
and then a feathered flock defends its territory. So range of claws and beaks. So I mean, on a scale, Jim, clowns or birds, I could see why they both would be scary.
Well, the irony is I live out in the woods and I actually deal with crows quite a bit, and they're actually surprisingly good natured. They're, in fact, what's interesting is that they are clearly intelligent, very conversational. I got to tell you, if I got to visit a giant crow's nest, it's like, oh, well, cool. How are you guys doing?
No.
Can I bring you
Jim,
some cracked corn?
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, I'd be terrified of geese. That's scary.
Well,
if you get me around a couple geese, I'm like, no thanks. I've seen them mess people up. So,
okay.
What's also terrifying is, let's see if I mispronounce this. Noche de Brujas scare zone. That is the Night of the Witches. So this is Latin American witch legends. So we'll have some evil cackling witches, and they will do their enchantments. So that is also happening. No Z's in that one. So there's, but we come back right to the Z's and back to the clowns because we also have chainsaw clowns, a scare zone. So this,
no.
if you thought Jack the Clown was rough, now you have evil clowns with chainsaws. So
man, you have not done this yet. At the parks. And here's the thing. All right. I know with the chainsaws. Okay. There are no chains on the saws. It is just the machine. It is just the blade. It's just making the noise. But the thing is, they will come running at you out of the dark. And in some cases they've got the knee pads on so they can slide at you. It is terrifying. And now clowns with chainsaws. Oh my God.
It does sound horrifying and terrifying. And listen, there are so many people because I'm online and it is still August and everybody's talking about Halloween Horror Nights and it is a true fandom and I want to embrace that as all I can. And I will have to take part in this and we will see if I can, I guess, get some thicker skin, especially if those chainsaws come near. So
Okay.
But we do have some more stuff, Halloween Horror Nights. We're not stopping there. This one is actually really exciting for me. I almost feel like I can do this one, right? Oh. Did you see that they released some images for the Freddy Fazbear, the Five Nights at Freddy's house? Did you see any of the imagery there? I
did. And again, a credit to John Murdy, the creative director for Halloween Horror Nights out in Hollywood. My understanding is he reached out to the folks at Henson, the creature shop, to work on these things. And mind you, it's a mix of puppeteered and animatronic takes on these characters from the scary pizza place. But they look amazing. I mean, they look like they've stepped straight out of the game. So,
well, I always thought, now you tell me, I always thought that the Muppets in Muppet Vision were the best animatronics in terms of real life. They look like the puppets, but they were also amazing animatronics. When you get to try to do humans, it gets a little tough. If you do cartoon characters, it can be a little tough. But these are like the perfect animatronics that you could see because at the end of the day, they don't need to look human-like. They just need to look like what they're on the game or the movie. And I think these would be terrifying. And some of the pictures, you wouldn't be able to tell if it's an animatronic or if it's a live actor or a puppet for that matter, which means you could certainly terrify somebody, especially if they're still and then not. I mean, I could see lots of screams, but this is the one. I mean, even WWE one, I think I'm more excited about something like this because this looks fantastic.
By the way, just to double back to what you said about Muppet Vision, when Disney initially was acquiring the Henson Company, and by the way, this was August of '89. So what is that? 26 years ago? No, 36 years ago. Holy cow. Jim Henson actually talked about that. How excited he was about translating his characters to audio animatronic figures, because he was like, you don't understand, these our puppets are the ideal things for that medium, given that they can fit the mechanics and the stylized performing. And you're not wrong. We got that one little taste of what Henson animatronics would have been like in the Muppet Vision, and the boxes on either side of the stage, and just makes you ache for what we would have gotten with what is it, the Great Muppet Movie Ride. I mean, there's a couple.
It would have been amazing.
It would have been amazing. So.
Well, listen, instead we got a stage show, and we know what Muppets don't do very well, and that is in full costume. Oversized. We know that is not necessarily the way to do it. But
all true.
Oh, well.
Okay, now back to Halloween Horror, only now we're in Florida, right?
Right. Well, this was something that I wasn't very much aware of, so I just wanted to chat with you and let everybody else out there that kind of come for some of the news. The Stay and Scream early entry has been updated for this year. So correct me if I'm wrong on this. It sounds to me like what you usually could do if you had a one-day ticket or a Scream early ticket or an annual pass for that matter. You would be able to enter. They'll let you enter the actual gates so you can get in early. And then they would have you go get your wristband at a select location. And then you would be held in a designated area until, let's say, 4 o'clock. Well, now you can go to Lombard's or Minion Cafe or VillainCon and get your wristband at 3. And then they'll let you roam around until 4. So that's kind of like an extra hour. I don't know if you just go right to waiting in line or if you would just get an extra hour in and maybe do your favorite attraction. But
I wonder, for me, I would almost be compelled to do a circuit of the park, because the interesting thing is you've got all of those scare zones that are set up. But again, this is prior to sundown. This is prior to the fog being pumped in, the theatrical light being kicked up. And it might be cool to eyeball that before circling back on it over the course of the night. I mean, for me, that's what I do with my free hour before. On the other hand, given the length of the queues, maybe it would, maybe this would be the time to go right to Freddy Fazbear. So,
now, Jim, I'd be heading to ET. That's what I'd be doing.
Okay.
If I got that extra hour, I'd see how many times I can get ET in. But I digress.
Okay. All right. Now, also at the Universal Orlando Resort, after a pretty lengthy rehab, we have a water park coming back online, right?
Well, yeah. Well, this is the special. Remember last year we talked about the Volcano Bay Nights.
Oh, yes, that's right. No, it's not the. I stand corrected.
They're not down yet. They're not down yet. I think it goes down later.
2026. That's right.
Right.
Okay.
But so this was, and this is where I'm asking everybody out there, because I did not get to participate in this after hours event. I have been to water parks at night over on the Disney side, but I wanted to see kind of how this one was. So if you're not familiar, this was on select nights in September and October, and this happened maybe at the same time last year. I think it might have been actually earlier this year. Either way, they have you have the water attractions at night. There's some live entertainment. There are some character meet and greets and special treats, but lower capacity, you would assume. It's like an after hours event. And this year it's going to be September 5th, 12th, 19th, 26th, and October 3rd, 10th, 17th, 24th, and 31st. So you could actually do this on Halloween, which would be really cool.
Which would be cool.
But did you hear anything about this, Jim? Like, did you hear any feedback? Was it worth it? Obviously they made money, or it was worth doing it again, but I'm wondering from feedback from the fans.
Well, I'm just going to flat out say this. What's interesting about Volcano Bay and something that so few people get to experience is when this water park was first built at the Universal Orlando Resort, they put in an amazing lighting package, especially for nighttime. But because this park is so rarely open at night, I mean, it's only people driving by on I-4 who look over and is like, wow, that looks really cool.
Causing the wrecks, Jim,
well,
the ones that I have to sit in. I got 15 more minutes to go, and there's the wreck that I'm stuck in. But thank you, Volcano Bay.
I'm sorry about that. You're not wrong, actually. I spoke with the Florida State Trooper about this very issue. It's like, you and your lighting package. Thanks, pal. But on the other hand, I mean, if you want to see this thing at its maximum prettiest, this would be a great thing to take in, Volcano Bay Nights, just to see, what they did to light up this space. And and you could get in a swim too. Though I gotta say, by October 24th with the 31st, it's getting a little cool at night in Orlando, isn't it?
I think so. But we'll see. So if you've witnessed this, if you did this, let us know. I just kind of curious, were the lines long? Was it worth the money? Who did you get to meet? What kind of characters were out there? What are their special treats? We'd love to hear it. Send us over a note, email, or find us on one of the socials.
And speaking of universal water-related things, when we get back from this break, we will continue our look back at the Jaws film series. In fact, we'll be picking up with one of the more infamous chapters in this series, Jaws 3D. But first, this. And we're back. Okay, Eric. So on the last installment of this series, we talked about the Jaws sequel that wasn't. National Lampoon's Jaws 3, People Nothing, which was supposed to be this raunchy R-rated parody of the first two films in the series. And this one got close, folks. I mean, it actually got announced in the trades, April of 79. It was supposed to go into production in October of that same year, 79, and then be released to theaters the following summer, 1980. But by the late summer of 79, this proposed Jaws sequel was in shambles. I mean, they wrote 6 different scripts between April and the end of summer. But Maddie Simmons, the high muckety muck at National Lampoon, who, by the way, had just made Animal House for Universal Studios, which previous summer of 78, had sold $141 million worth of tickets in North America alone. He wanted to make a genuine R-rated movie, one that would have starred Bo Derek of 10 fame, and Ms. Derek would have spent much of the running time of this film topless, whereas David Brown and Richard D. Zanuck, the producers of the first two films in the Jaws series, they wanted a PG rated movie, which in their mind would then allow all the teenagers who'd previously seen the original Jaws and Jaws 2 multiple times, that they could also see Jaws 3, People Nothing. And by the way, that to Brown and Zanuck's way of thinking is the real key to Jaws' success at the box office. The teenagers would go back again and again because they wanted to experience that movie's jump scares with a theater full of people. And meanwhile, Maddie Simmons is trying to explain to David and Richard, it's like, your logic is flawed. I mean, guys, the original Jaws came out in the summer of 75. By the time we finish making Jaws 3, People Nothing, it'll be the summer of 1980s. Those kids are 5 years older. All right. They're not teens anymore. They're adults in their 20s. These very, and what are that's the perfect audience for a raunchy R-rated comedy. But meanwhile, Zanuck and Brown, they refuse to budge. They want PG, and Simmons, look, he's not going to waste his time and doing something that in his mind would potentially, ding the National Lampoon brand, which was just getting started making movies. He didn't want to make what he thought would be a weak, watered down, toothless parody, which, by the way, if you think about, the Jaws 3, People Nothing, it's like, it's a movie about a great white. So, watered down and toothless, not a good thing. All right. So anyway, by the fall of 79, this thing is dead in the water. God, we're really doing the water jokes today.
You are, Jim.
Jeez. Okay. Maddie and David and Richard have parted ways, and the producers of the original Jaws and Jaws 2 are now they're casting around, looking for a new idea to build a sequel around. And again, one thing's certain, they can't go back to Amity Island, because, we're going to get, what, another summer, another great white, going to show up, eat tourists, and ruin the summer season. This idea, forgive me, it's been done to death, all right? So, but if not that, what? And Zeneca and Brown are stumps, which is not making the people who run Universal Studios happy. They were actively looking forward to Jaws 3, People Nothing, getting another Animals House size success at the box office. So there's a lot of grumbling going on up in the Black Tower. This is that 36-story skyscraper that overlooks the Universal lot out in Hollywood. This is the place where all the executives and bean counters hang out. So when this project falls apart, it's like, okay, do something. But then a revival of something from Hollywood's past gives Zanuck and Brown a get out of development hell free card. And that is the return of 3D movies from the early 1950s. Now, a lot has been written about the film industry in the late 40s and the early 50s, particularly their battle with the rise of television, how the studios tried all sorts of gimmicks in an effort to get people off the couch and get them to come back to the local movie theaters. And among the things that the studios tried were 3D films. Now, interestingly enough, Eric, this technology was developed back in the 1920s, but it was only after weekly movie ticket sales began to plummet in the late 1940s, early 1950s, the studio execs turned to this filmmaking technique as a possible way to lure people back to theaters. So first came, and I swear to God, Bwana Devil, which United Artists sent out into theaters in November of 1952. And by the way, starred Robert Stack of Untouchables fame.
And Unsolved Mysteries, right?
There we go. There we go. All
Heck
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd watch him in 3D. I'd watch Unsolved Mysteries in 3D to this day. That'd be great.
Oh, very cool. Well, now this jungle adventure epic winds up doing big business at the box office. And so the other studios in Hollywood quickly put 3D movies of their own into production. For example, April of 53, just 6 months after Bwana Devil bows, Warner Brothers has released House of Wax with Vincent Price. And by the way, this is the first 3D movie to have a soundtrack in stereo. So you're not just getting a 3D picture when you watch House of Wax, you're also getting 3D sound. Ooh. All right. Universal, they want to get on the action. So May of that same year, 53, they release It Came from Outer Space, which is basically this sci-fi horror film, but also features a stereophonic soundtrack. MGM, they kind of go the other way. It's like, hey, let's do a musical. So they do a 3D version of the Broadway smash Kiss Me Kate that arrives in theaters December of 53. And back to Universal now, because the folks over who enjoy Dark Universe will this is where one of those people, or one of those characters from the Frankenstein ride, February of 54, this is when The Creature from the Black Lagoon gets released to theaters. And this one does so well, Eric, they actually rush a sequel into production. And The Revenge of the Creature, it arrives in theaters just 13 months later, March of 55. But by then, Hollywood's interest in making 3D movies, it's waned. And now, what studios are trying to get people back into theater, it's widescreen. It's Panavision, VistaVision, CinemaScope, with the idea that the best way to fight television with its teeny tiny screen that only shows you stuff in black and white is to put things on the biggest possible screen and then put them up there in Technicolor and with stereophonic sound.
Now, Jim, let me ask you real quick from a 3D perspective. Is this the old red and blue kind of 3D? Is that what we're talking about here?
No, we are decades away from the polarized things. Okay. And this is also, to be honest, what helped kill 3D, at least in the 1950s, because for a lot of people to put on those glasses in a theater, it was uncomfortable. It would give a lot of people headaches. But anyway, we jump ahead now to the early 1980s. And there's a company called Filmways that takes a chance on this Spanish-American Western that had been shot in 3D. It's the first feature film in decades to be shot in this format. But I love the title of this thing because it's just right up front about what it is. It's literally called Coming At You, and it's like, so it goes into theaters in July of 81. And Eric, it's shot on a minuscule budget. But the gimmick of this presentation is unique enough to audiences in the 1980s that Coming At You does really strong business in the North American box office. And Warner Brothers notices this. And there's an executive at Warner Brothers like, no, wait a minute. We got Dial M for Murder. And now, mind you, this is a movie that Alfred Hitchcock directed in 1954. Stars Ray Milland, Grace Kelly. But here's the thing, Eric. Hitchcock actually shot the entire thing in 3D, but by the time they finished the editing and scoring process, 3D had effectively blown itself out. And so Warner Brothers okay, well, we'll just put this out into theaters in the 2D format. It'll be fine. And it did fine. It was actually, hugely popular with filmgoers back in 54, one of the top grossing films for that year, but it was never shown the way Hitchcock had intended. So the guys at Warner Brothers are coming at you, is making crazy money. And we got this Hitchcock movie. I mean, a prestige title from 54 that has never been shown theatrically in 3D. Why don't we do that? And it's not like we're spending money on a new movie. All we have to do is go back and pull the 3D footage and make new prints. And they do that. They put it out in theaters in February of 1982. But with this advertising campaign, see Dial M for Murder the way that Hitchcock wanted you to see the movie, in 3D. And people flock to see this re-release. It does big numbers.
And the marketing, they use that marketing to this day when they re-release stuff in IMAX and 4K and all this. It's that's so funny. But it's smart business.
Well, and which again does not go unnoticed by people in and around Hollywood, especially those suits up in the Black Tower and the Universal Lot who really want Brown and Zanuck to get off their butts and deliver a Jaws sequel. So in a moment, we will talk about how that movie got made at all places. SeaWorld Orlando. But first, this. And we're back. Okay, Eric, again, we're talking about Jaws 3 and how the weird resurgence in audiences' interest in seeing movies in 3D in the early 1980s led to us getting Jaws 3D. But let's cut to the chase here. By the time Jaws 3D finally arrives in theaters in July of 1983, doing the third film in your series in 3D had actually become something of a Hollywood cliche. I mean, case in point, American International Pictures releases the Amityville Horror to theaters in July of 79. It does well enough that Orion Pictures then puts a prequel into development, Amityville 2, The Possession, that gets released to theaters in September of 82. And this one does so well that Orion now rushes a third film in development. This one, I swear to God, Eric, Amityville 3D arrives in theaters November of 83. And same thing, absolute same thing happens over Paramount Pictures with their Friday the 13th series. First horror film in that franchise, opens the theaters May of 1980. That one does so well. Sequel rushed into production. Friday the 13th Part 2 arrives in theaters just 1 year later, May of 81. And again, because ticket sales are so strong for 2, a third Friday the 13th is fast-tracked. But the then head of Paramount Pictures, one Michael D. Eisner, He notices what's going on with the box office of Coming at Ya. And again, that re-release of Alfred Hitchcock's Style M for Murder, which is why Michael decrees that, okay, third Friday the 13th movie has to be shot in 3D.
Hold on. Jim, do they get creative with the title?
Yeah, well, no. I mean, that's the interesting thing. It's Friday the 13th Part 3D.
All right.
But anyway, that arrives in August 13th, 1982. Now, what I find fascinating about it is that production of Jaws 3D and Friday the 13th 3D actually begins same time of March of 1982. But because this Universal picture film needs mechanical sharks that will actually look good in 3D, pre-production on that film takes far longer than it does for Paramount to shoot the entirety of Friday the 13th 3D. In fact, Friday the 13th 3D is completely wrapped by June of that same year, 82, whereas Jaws 3D doesn't even get before the cameras till June 15th. And then it continues to shoot right up until mid-January of 1983. Remember that Brown and Zanuck, after they shot Jaws 2, again, all right, we can't go back to Amity Island. Audiences just aren't going to believe that a great white shark would return to the exact same island off the coast of Massachusetts and then ruin that town's summer season by eating tourists. So, but here's the thing: that the great white that's going to appear in Jaws 3 has to swim someplace. and more to the point, he's got to have a steady supply of tourists to dine on. So where do you find a lot of tourists close to water? Florida.
Sure.
Okay. Now I want to take a second here to because Jaws 3 starts badly and just goes downhill from there. Because think about this. This film actually starts off with the SeaWorld water skiing team. They are practicing a routine off the Florida coast. I mean, they're out in the Atlantic, all right? And then when they're finished practicing, they turn and zoom down a canal, which, by the way, has a gate on it because, you don't want big things coming out of the Atlantic, all making it all the way to SeaWorld. And then these water skiers still in pyramid formation, Eric. They travel all the way down this narrow canal to the main lagoon of SeaWorld Orlando.
Okay, hold on. So they're not high. This isn't like a SeaWorld that they pretend to be on the Atlantic coast. This is the SeaWorld in Orlando. So those skiers are really fantastic at that hour and 30-minute drive.
There we go. I mean, literally, the closest beach to SeaWorld is Cocoa Beach. And the park is 60 miles inland. I mean, it's just, first of all, that's a hell of a long canal. More to the point, the leg strength of these kids water skiing the entire way in pyramid formation. 5 on the bottom, 4 on the second level, 3 on the top. I mean, it's amazing. So,
all Olympians, Jim. They're all Olympians.
There we go. Now, if you are a theme park history buff like myself and Eric, what's kind of cool about this movie, in fact, one of the only saving graces of this film, SeaWorld Orlando opens December of 73, and movie shot in again, June of 82 through January of the following year. So it's an interesting snapshot of what the park looked like back in the day. In fact, what's kind of interesting is if you look around the actors in the movie who were really terrible, you get an interesting look at what this park was like back in the day. Now, mind you, to avoid a lot of the tech issues that bedeviled the original Jaws and Jaws 2, Universal decided to hire Joe Alves to direct Jaws 3. Now, Joe was the guy who actually built the mechanical sharks that were used in the making of the first Jaws movie. And then for the second Jaws film, he was the production designer and the second unit director. Now, the downside of hiring the guy who previously has mostly worked in mechanical effects to direct your movie is Okay, let's be positive. The sharks in Jaws 3, they look amazing. Whereas the real life performers like Dennis Quaid and Bess Armstrong, well, it's weird. They look mechanical. They are pretty fake up there on screen, and you have trouble believing anything that's actually going on screen in the film. But in the end, Eric, does it matter? No. Jaws 3D does solid business at the box office. Summer of 1983 comes in 15th at the North American box office, which is good enough for the executives up in the Black Tower overlooking the Universal Hollywood. A lot. It's like, all right, fourth film, get started. But this is the part of the story that I actually love, Eric, that I always wondered what Lew Wasserman thought when he watched Jaws 3D. Because remember, this thing shot in and around SeaWorld in 1982, because some 6 years earlier, and we're talking the fall of 76, Universal actually tried to buy SeaWorld. Think about it. If they had completed this transaction, they would have been able to enter the Orlando tourism market as a direct competitor of Disney. Because think about it, when SeaWorld opened, they were the only game in town in regard to Disney competition. But they would have been in that space 14 years ahead of when Universal Studios Florida first opened in June of 1990. And oh God, the kicker of the story, Eric, is that the money that Universal Studios was using to buy up huge blocks of stock of SeaWorld, because this was a hostile takeover.
Okay.
All right. It was the money that Universal had made the year previous from Jaws.
Oh God!
How
funny is that?
Hundreds of men. So here's Universal using Jaws money trying to buy SeaWorld.
Mm-hmm.
But the kicker, the absolute kicker to the story is, even with all of that Jaws money at his disposal, Lew Wasserman, as the head of Universal, still loses his bid to acquire SeaWorld. And a lot of this is because of who Lew was and how he did business. He was a very old school guy. And what he did is he went to SeaWorld after acquiring these huge blocks of stock and said, look, I intend to acquire your company. But our people have determined that, well, at that point, there were only 3 SeaWorld parks in the entire world. And so it's like, tell you what, we think a fair price for your 3 parks is $15 million a piece. So we are putting an offer on the table of $45 million, and we would like you to consider that. And he walks away because it's like, that's a fair offer, and we've explained why. Meanwhile, there's this textbook company, Harcourt, Brace, and Yovanovitch, that looks at the SeaWorld parks and like, wow, we could, if you think about how we could leverage the educational component of what goes on at SeaWorld, and, we could use it to help sell our books, and we should put in a bid here. And they find out what Universal is bidding. And it's like, okay, they come to the table and said, we bid $46 million. I mean, it's just literally like $1 more,
Right.
And this is the thing. And there were people involved in negotiation who literally called Lew Wasserman and said, you've been outbid. I mean, not by a lot, just literally $1 million. All you need, if you come back with 47, you got this. Hell, you come back at 46.5, you got this.
Right.
And Lew was like, that's not how I do business. I made our bid. I explained why we would be willing to pay $45 million if these people, these SeaWorld people, aren't honorable enough to accept our bid. I don't want this. And that's how it slips away.
Blame the book company. We
could have
had a Universal before Epcot was there, or all types of stuff, right?
Oh,
could have been a different world.
Could have been a different world. And now what's interesting is there's a great book by Jay Stein about the history of the Universal parks. And, and again, Lou Wasserman never, ever admitted that he made a mistake. He was at that school of business. But there's a story in that book about it's maybe, 5 years later, 6 years later. And now, the Universal is announced its plans for the Universal City, Florida. This is 1981, but instead of paying 46.5 to get into the Orlando theme park market, they're looking at, oh God, we got to put in at least $100 million. And even then, they it's like, that's not even going to be enough. And so Lou's up in his office in the Black Tower looking out over the lot, and he's got his back to Jay, and just sort of, in a quiet moment says, damn it, we should have bought SeaWorld.
Jim, and he would have got it for 15.
Yeah.
Because we could have had a Universal Studios here in Ohio. I would have been a fan far earlier than now. So yeah, I think Lou, you made a goofball mistake there, but oh well, at least we got more Jaws.
Yeah, well, but that's the downside. We did get more Jaws, and on the next installment of the Epic Universal podcast, we are going to get to the worst film in the series, which is Jaws 4, aka Jaws the Revenge. This time it's really, really personal. But
his feelings are hurt.
There we go. But on the other hand, the sharks look great. Okay, I'm just saying.
Oh, good.
All right. And on that note, I think we should call it a day here at the Epic Universal podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That was great. I didn't know much about Jaws 3D. I was thinking Jaws 3D was actually the Jaws in the Back to the Future, but I think that's Jaws like 34 in 3D, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, I think that's where the joke this time it's really, really personal comes from. Yes.
Yeah, no, we'll talk more about 4 next week. I'm excited to hear about it. I didn't know this movie existed, so we'll go from there.
All right. Well, as we close up shop here, again, as always, folks, we'd love to hear from you in regard to the show here. If you have ideas for future stories or comments on the stories we've told here, we'd love to hear from you. How can the nice folks get a hold of you, Eric?
Jim, I think following me on Instagram or X at Eric Hersey is the best way. And I'll tell you, if you follow today, tomorrow you're going to see all types of goodies, because we are holding our, I think, 5th annual lemonade stand in the Wheeling area. And I will tell you, it is themed off of Seuss Landing or Dr. Seuss this year. We have taken all the inspiration from the kids, and I are all Universal decked out, and we have themed drinks for Cat in the Hat, One Fish, Blue Fish, tons of Lorax. So I will be sharing all those pictures. And this is the kids so make a killing. This is and this lemonade stand sells hot dogs, nachos. This is a epic proportion lemonade stand. So follow along if you want to see this madness that happens here in the wonderful Wheeling, West Virginia. But
that's so cool. Wow. I have nothing that's nearly that cool to talk about.
But you're still worth a follow, Jim. You're still worth it. I think you actually plug good things.
All right. We'll see. But speaking of which, if you want to follow me, I'm on X. I'm on Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. Anyway, that is going to do it for this week's show. Thanks for listening, folks, and stick around to find out what's coming up this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Lon Testa, or animation and movie news. Please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about podcasts and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.